Welcome to Against the Spread, where we here at Sportsnet pick games for you against the spread in the NFL. And it's been a year of comebacks, and the comeback has not started. It's over. Gilo has come back. He has passed me in terms of picks, and the way he's been picking recently, there's no chance of me being able to cover his now one-game lead and come back. He's faring better than his Philadelphia Eagles
Oh,
and Carson Wentz. But we will get to that.
just let me have this.
Right, exactly. No, I can't let you have it. Although, my favorite team, the Dallas Cowboys, aren't any better.
It's been rough.
Let's start with two teams who aren't better than where they were a couple years ago when they were in the Super Bowl against each other, but they've got the outside chance of maybe getting into the playoffs again and wreaking some havoc once they get there. The New England Patriots go to Los Angeles to face the Rams. -5, the Rams are at home. This is the Thursday game, so it's coming pretty quickly. Who do you like there?
Yeah, it's an interesting one, despite what looks like a serious gap in the talent of these teams. It really is a fascinating Thursday nighter, and I think it has a lot to do with the fact that we saw these two teams play each other in the Super Bowl a couple years ago, one of the worst Super Bowls I've ever seen. But coaching masterclass from Bill Belichick, and for me, it's going to come down to that again. We talked last week about how we're going to take Bill Belichick over Anthony Lynn, and that's a much bigger coaching divide in that game than in this game. But I think it still stands. The lone black mark on Sean McVay's resume is still that Super Bowl, and while I think the Rams will probably be a bit more prepared, or a lot more prepared, for the Patriots in this one than they were in that Super Bowl, I still think Belichick's going to come up with something interesting to stop Jared Goff and that Rams offense. And for that reason, and the fact that 5 points is a bit uncomfortable for me, I'm going to go with the Patriots, who are 4-0 against the spread in their last four as underdogs.
When you look back at that Super Bowl, the narrative going in was Bill Belichick against maybe the new Bill Belichick and Sean McVay, but really I felt like it was Bill Belichick against Jared Goff in that game. And we know Bill Belichick is so good against young QBs. We saw it against Justin Herbert this week after he was killing the league and looked like a sure rookie of the year. He really struggled against Bill Belichick. And Goff, even though he's a couple years removed, still struggles against pressure, 32nd in the league against pressure. And Bill can dial up some zone pressures from everywhere. So that's why I think this one is going to be much closer than the 5-point spread. To me, this is a field goal game if the Rams are able to win. They have much more talent, but still I think there's more coaching talent defensively anyways on the sidelines of the Patriots, and that's why I think New England covers this one. One of Bill Belichick's disciples running the Giants, and he's not truly a Sean McVay disciple running Arizona, but basically that was how he was sold, is going to be the next Sean McVay. And I think stylistically this game may look very similar to the Thursday nighter. That's the Arizona Cardinals going to New York to face the Giants, where the Giants, even though they're playing much better football, are still 2.5-point dogs against Arizona. Who do you like in this one?
This is a really interesting one, because even after their shock upset of the Seahawks on the weekend, I think it's fair to say that gut instinct would be Cardinals here. It's a relatively small spread against a team in the Giants that haven't been good in a really bad division. But both of these teams' recent form suggests actually the opposite. Not only have the Cardinals won or lost 4 of their last 5, and they're a Hail Murray away from losing 5 straight, they haven't covered in 5 straight and are just 3-7 against the spread in their last 10. On the flip side, the Giants have won 4 straight and are 5-1 against the spread in their last 6. And so that just all tells me that we should go with the Giants here, and what has been a really good defensive performance, especially from what has ended up being a bit of an underrated Giants team. So I'm going to go with the hot hand and the Giants in this one.
The Giants are hot. The second hottest team in the NFC, the second longest win streak to the New Orleans Saints. And we still remember that 1-7 record, but I think a lot of that is new coaching staff, new coordinators, abbreviated season, young quarterback. Now they're much better, even though that young quarterback in Daniel Jones hasn't played because of the hamstring. We mentioned it. Colt McCoy is Daniel Jones light in a way. Daniel Jones short, and he was able to do enough to make sure that that defense did stay on the field. On the flip side, Arizona, who at the quarterback has like Lamar Jackson short. Well, Kyler Murray, as good as he was, and he was in the MVP conversation to start the year, has been banged up, and he's looked banged up. His shoulder clearly is an issue. The last 3 weeks, no rushing TDs, 61 combined yards rushing after starting the year, where he got a rushing TD in every game and was averaging around 60 yards rushing. So for those reasons, I think the Giants not only will keep this close, I wouldn't be surprised if they outright won this one at home against the Cardinals. Minnesota, Tampa Bay, a game with NFC playoff implications for both teams. Tampa Bay 6.5-point favorites is the line right now. Who do you like?
I don't think it would be unfair to say that these are two of the more unpredictable teams in the league right now. The Vikings started really terribly, to the point where Mike Zimmer's job might have been at risk, and now all of a sudden they're in a wild card spot. And on the flip side, the Bucks can be world beaters one week and look like pretenders the next. So for those reasons, I went into how they're faring against the spread, and they've proven to be equally inconsistent, not surprisingly, given who these teams are. But in one spot, and this is going to dictate my pick, the Vikings have actually fared pretty well as underdogs so far this season. They're 4-1 against the spread as underdogs. So I'm going to take the Vikings, even though it might look like this could be a pretty tough matchup for that defense.
Yeah, I was pretty torn on this one as well, especially how bad Tampa Bay has been of late. Tom Brady specifically has been the root of many of their issues. 7 interceptions in his last 4 games. That's his worst 4-game span since 2011 in terms of protecting the football. However, they had a bye, and they had a week to reset and get on the same page. And in even the last time we saw them, they were much better in the second half than they were the first. So I think coming out of that bye, not playing great football, they'll have a bounce back performance. And for that reason, I'm leaning with Tampa Bay. But if this number was a bit higher, I certainly would be considering Minnesota in this one. This number doesn't matter. There is none. It's pick 'em. Houston and Chicago started with Chicago as +1.5 at home. Now it's just a matter of what football team do you trust. Two teams that have been playing a little bit better of late after having some poor starts, and they'll need to get going respectively if they're going to make the playoffs. They're in the hunt, but that's not going to be the case for very much longer if they don't get some W's consistently. Who do you like in this one?
Yeah, this is another one where we think we know an identity of a team, but really it's not that way at all, because the Bears, the one thing that we've thought they had going for them was that defense. But really, when you end up looking at the numbers, the Bears defense isn't all that good at all. They're giving up a lot of yards over the last 5 weeks. And so when I think about this game, I think about who's playing on the opposite side of the field, and it's Deshaun Watson, who, despite having a pretty poor cast of characters around him, is playing like an MVP. And so when you have an MVP-type quarterback like Deshaun Watson against a defense that's struggling, I think that makes this pick pretty easy for me, especially as a pick-em, and I'm going to go with the Texans.
Yeah, he doesn't have a lot around him, right? When Kiki Kuti is your first read on offense, it's not ideal. But the backfield's a little bit more healthy. He's got a bit more help in that aspect. And I just see it as the look at the two quarterbacks. Trubisky has been back, and he's given them a little bit of a jolt, but he hasn't, been a world beater. And I expect fully the narrative coming out of this game for Chicago Bears fans to say, we have Mitch Trubisky, and we have a coach who's supposed to get the best out of Mitch Trubisky when we could have had Deshaun Watson. So for all those reasons, or a quarterback like Deshaun Watson, and for all those reasons, I think Houston will probably win in this one. But I have no great read on either of these teams or this game, so This game could be what Tennessee-Cleveland was last week, where you turn on and you say, wait, what's the score? I thought it was going to be close.
Yeah.
So
38-7?
Yeah. It was ugly. It was ugly. Which takes us to our next game. Two teams who've had some real ugly performances. Tennessee was supposed to be a team some thought would compete for the top of the AFC. That's not been the case, but they're still in the hunt. They're 7.5 point favorites going to Jacksonville. Who do you like in this one?
Well, we talked about the Titans, and they're a real tough team to nail down because one week they're blowing out division rivals, and then the next week they're doing what they did against Cleveland, which ended up being a little bit closer than what it actually was. But for me, this is about the Jags, who are the kings of hanging around in a game without actually ever winning games. And they've been a betting go-to as a result. Over the last 5 games, they're 4-1 against the spread, and they've hung around in every game. They've had a chance to win every game. So for that reason, I'm gonna continue to lean on, surprisingly, the consistency of the Jaguars to be good but not good enough, and take Jacksonville in this game.
Yeah, another tough one. Tennessee's defense has been so bad. They've given up the most third down conversions in the league. I'm not sure how much it's going to matter against Jacksonville. This line started at 9.5, and if it stayed at that number, I would go with the Jags. But it's come down to 7.5, and the Jags defense is just so bad. In terms of DVOA, they're have been the worst, if not among the worst in the league all year. And I do think Tennessee has enough playmakers on offense to make it, a comfortable win. So I will take the 7.5 with Tennessee, and this may be the game that I kick myself for, but I'm going with Tennessee. However, no matter where you think the spread might be, if you haven't taken Tennessee yet, in terms of Survivor, this might be the week to play that card, as it's getting down to slim pickings. You probably haven't taken these next 2 teams in Survivor. I don't know if this is the week to do it, as I expect the game to be relatively close. That's Denver going to Carolina, where the Panthers at home are 3.5 point favorites. Who do you like in this one?
I struggled a bit with this one because the Broncos have proven to be a bit more of a plucky team than many expected, despite all the injuries they've had. They've been one of the most injured teams in the NFL, and they prove that they can hang around if the game gets a bit sloppy, like we saw on Sunday night against the Chiefs. But for me, the defining factor of this game is Christian McCaffrey, who changes the outlook of any game that he's in. He's the true wild card in this game, and all you need to do is look back at the only game he's played in months, and that was a couple weeks ago against the Kansas City Chiefs, where the Panthers offense went blow for blow with Patrick Mahomes and company. And the thing that is making me lean Panthers here is not only that, but the fact that the Broncos have no capability of being able to hang around in the game like that. So I'm going to take the Panthers at home because of CMC.
Yeah, and the other issue for me with Denver is not only can they not hang around in a game like that, we saw that this past week, but they make costly mistakes, Drew Lock specifically, and turn the ball over and give a short field, which you can't do in a game that's going to be this close. And with some explosive players like a CMC and a Robbie Anderson, you don't want to give the opposition a short field. So I, too, am going to take Carolina to cover the 3.5 point spread in this one. All right, it is, my favorite team to pick against, the Dallas Cowboys, going up against the Cincinnati Bengals. 3.5 is the spread, and I wouldn't be surprised if it was 3.5 either way. It's 3.5 for Dallas, even though they're on the road. Andy Dalton goes back to Cincinnati for his revenge game, I suppose. Who do you like in this one?
Yeah, honestly, I hadn't even thought about that, but that is a really interesting storyline.
Why would you, though?
Yeah, exactly. I think that says a lot about where these teams are right now. Along with being one of the worst matchups of the week, bar down, it's also one of the toughest to pick because of that. We know the Cowboys are bad. You've been a victim of that yourself. Both straight up and against the spread. I think they're 2-8 or 2-10 against the spread. And the Bengals numbers are a bit skewed because they are good against the spread, but most of that came with the Joe Burrow under center. But when it comes to this game, I'm going to lean on what I know to be true, and that's that the Cowboys are bad. Like I said, they're 2-10 against the spread, and the only covers have come when they've been significant underdogs. So I'm going to lean with the Bengals and the home underdog here against what is, like I said, a bad Cowboys team.
You said it right there. The Cowboys are bad. I made the mistake of picking them. I will never do it again. The Cowboys are bad. I'm picking the Bengals.
Lovely. That was amazing.
The Kansas City Chiefs are very good. And now that Pittsburgh stumped their toe against the Washington football team, they are in control of their destiny in terms of having the much coveted bye in the AFC. Miami may not be in play for a bye, but they could still get a home date if they're able to catch up with Buffalo and win the division. Kansas City goes to Miami. 7 is the spread, a little bit lower than the spreads we've seen recently from the Chiefs. Who do you like in this one?
Well, one of these teams is 6-6 against the spread so far this season, and one of these teams is 9-3 against the spread. And it's not exactly how you'd expect it to go. It's actually the Dolphins who are 9-3 against the spread, and the Chiefs who are 6-6. And the Chiefs have really had a rough go against the spread so far this month. I think over the last month they're 0-4 against the spread, and so I'm going to go with the Dolphins because of that. I think they're able to hang around with a team like Kansas City because they have a really good, well-coached defense, and they have the kind of defense that might be able to do what Denver was able to do. I mean, they may have lucked into it, but my point is they're a good defense that might be able to do some damage against the Chiefs. Now, if this turns into a shootout and that defense doesn't perform for Miami, I have big concerns about that, but I'm going to bank on Brian Flores having his team ready for this and being able to at least hang around with the Chiefs.
Yeah, we're in lockstep on many picks this week, which sucks for me because I'm trying to have a better record than you. But I thought we were going to have some difference on this one, and we don't. The last 4 wins by the Kansas City Chiefs, by 2 points, by 4 points, by 3 points, by 6 points. They've won a lot of close football games, which makes me feel real comfortable about them potentially winning a bunch of playoff games and winning another Super Bowl. Does not make me feel comfortable with them in relatively big spreads against relatively good football teams. I would think a touchdown is relatively big against another playoff team, and so I do think Miami will cover the 7 points at home. 2 teams that I think could be built to give people problems, like the Kansas City Chiefs, if they are able to get into the postseason. The Indianapolis Colts go to Las Vegas, and Indy, even though they're the road team, are favored 3 points. A lot of road favorites this week. Do you like the home dog in this one?
No, straight up I don't, because since we've seen Vegas hang around with the Chiefs, and they did that a couple weeks ago on Sunday night, they've wildly underperformed expectations. First no showing in Atlanta, and then needing a last-second touchdown to beat the Jets. Now, the Colts are far from a slam dunk pick any week because they've shown to be a bit inconsistent, but I don't trust these Raiders to show up on a week-to-week basis. It's entirely plausible that Vegas gets a bounce from that Hail Mary against the Jets, and they come in to this game ready to perform, but I don't have any evidence of that, and I don't trust them to do that, so I'm going to take the Colts as slight road favorites.
Yeah, I mean, listen, if Greg Williams doesn't decide to have a zero safety blitz with his safety spying a quarterback that one is not fast and 2 is not going to run the distance of the field to win the game, and have the fastest receiver at the NFL Combine against an undrafted rookie corner whose combine time was slower than mine coming out of high school, this number would be a lot bigger than it is what I'm trying to say. That if the Las Vegas Raiders lost to the Jets, this wouldn't have started at plus 2.5 for Las Vegas and now be at plus 3. We'd be talking about 5 or 6 or maybe even 7. So for all those reasons, I'm going to take the Colts. Speaking of said Jets and the now unemployed Greg Williams, this is a massive number, 13.5 points not against a team that was in the Super Bowl last year, but maybe one with an outside shot of getting into one this year against Seattle. At home in Seattle, but 13.5 points. Full 2 touchdowns the Seahawks will have to win by. Is that too big for you?
Yeah, I mean, I know the gap between these two teams is immense. I mean, we were talking about Seattle not too long ago about being one of those favorites to make the Super Bowl. Now they've obviously fallen off a bit, and for that reason, I am a bit surprised at the size of the spread, given what we saw from both of these teams last week. The last play of the game aside that we just talked about, the Jets put up a real fight against the Raiders last week and should have won that game, if not for a terrible call that cost a guy his job. Seattle, on the other hand, is coming off the worst game of the season, and they're searching for answers, especially on offense. I don't expect them to have as bad a game on offense. I expect them to find some answers, especially against a winless Jets team. But the fact that Seattle has covered just 2 of their last 8 games against the spread, and all of those spreads were tighter than this one, makes me think that I should take the Jets here, and that's exactly what I'm going to do. I was able to correctly pick that last week, and so I'm going to say something I never thought I'd say this year, and I'm going to ride the Jets.
Yeah, I'm going to ride the Jets as well. So one thing is not changing now that Greg Williams is no longer calling the plays. They still have terrible corners who are not fast, and they're going up against maybe one of the most talented receiver groups in the league. And it's funny, all of the talk about the Jets defense, which is terrible when you look at DVOA, the 26. You know what's worse? Jets offense is worse, quite frankly. They're 30th. And so maybe they need to fire a coordinator on that side of the ball. And that's actually the part of this matchup that I think is intriguing is, Seattle's defense, outside of, Dunlop getting pressure or their safeties getting pressure, doesn't get any pressure. And now they'll be going up against an offense that is struggling even more so than they are. And that for that reason, I think this game is not going to be close. So I'm going to take Seattle in the 13.5 points. It's crazy. I thought 7 points was too much for the Chiefs, but 13.5 is not too much for Seattle. But I actually feel real comfortable with this one. And for whatever reason, if you haven't taken Seattle yet in Survivor, this would be the week to do it if you want to.
Yeah, I might be taking the Jets against the spread, but I have no thoughts that they can win this game.
Do you have thoughts that the Washington football team can win this game, that they can upset the Niners, two teams that have, again, played much better, of late than they did earlier in the year, two teams that have been somewhat ravaged by injuries, but are still competing. The line is 3 for San Fran at home in Arizona because it's 2020. Who do you like in this one?
I'm a bit surprised by this number, to be honest, given the different results we saw from these teams on Monday night. And I'll gladly take Washington as underdogs here. They've been a pretty solid bet over the last 3 weeks, including a huge upset of the Steelers in that first game on Monday night. And San Fran just isn't covering. They've covered just one time in their last 5 games. So I'll ride another hot NFC East team, another thing that's very 2020, and take Washington.
Yeah, these two teams are relatively even for me. I'm surprised that the spread is a field goal, because I think it's a 1-2 point swing either way. I wouldn't be surprised. And so for that reasons, I'll take the 3 points and use it as insurance and take Washington as well. New Orleans goes to Philly. The level of quarterback play by the guys who are going to be playing and their requisite heights is probably somewhat even, but nothing in this football game is even when you look at the way the two teams played, the depth charts, and really the offensive play calling by the two head coaches. Who do you like? Saints as 7-point favorites on the road, or Philly with Jalen Hurts now as their starter to respond and to cover, or if not win?
I'd love to say that I expect or like the Hurts-led Eagles to come out at home and give the best team in the conference a run for its money, but I just don't see it happening. Philadelphia had to make a quarterback change, I feel. There was really no other option, but it doesn't change the fact that this team still has the same problems around said quarterback. They have a makeshift offensive line that's allowing more sacks in the league than anybody else, and an offensive skill position group that just isn't producing. They have no big play capability, and the offense hasn't been able to put anything together. Hurts might be able to offer a spark like he did on Sunday against Green Bay, but there's no way they're going to be able to hang against one of the best defenses in the NFL right now. So I really have no trouble taking the Saints here.
Yeah. Congratulations, Jalen Hurts. You get the hottest defense in the league. And you're going to ask you to do some Taysom Hilly things, but you don't have Taysom Hilly talent around you, unfortunately. And the Saints really haven't missed a beat without Drew Brees. They're 8-0 without him since 2018. And really, it's their defense that has stepped up to provide them a little margin of error on offense. And the defense was supposed to be really good this year, that struggled out the gate, is now finding their form. Since week 9, when Brees was out, TD to interception ratio, giving up 2 TDs, 9 interceptions. Total QBR, 21, that's first. Completion percentage, 53, that's first. Open percentage, 30%, that's first. They're only allowing people to be open 30% of the time. They've been so good. This is going to be much different than what Jalen Hurts has seen on tape for the most part in the NFC East, what he saw in real life in the SEC. So for those reasons, I like the Saints to cover this big number. An NFC North matchup we got next. Green Bay goes to Detroit. 7.5 points is the spread for the visiting Packers. Who do you like?
Kudos to the Lions for doing what they did on Sunday and coming back to win that game against the Bears in the first one since Matt Patricia was fired. But this is a whole different beast. This isn't the offensively inept Chicago Bears. They're not only facing MVP candidate and Aaron Rodgers in one of the best offenses in the NFL right now, but they're facing a Packers team that have covered 3 of their last 4 spreads that are more than 6 points. So I like them to do that again against a Detroit team that deserves some credit for what they did on the weekend, but really have no shot, in my opinion, of hanging around in this game.
No, Aaron Rodgers has made a living off of feasting against the Lions, specifically against the Lions in Detroit on a fast track. And I think that's going to be the same this week. So I like the Packers to win this one comfortably as well. Atlanta, a road favorite. That's right. The Atlanta Falcons are favored going to the Los Angeles Chargers. Who do you like in this one?
I really have no reason at all to be going in this direction, especially after they were thoroughly decimated by the Patriots on Sunday. But I'm going to take the Chargers. It's just a gut feeling I have. And I haven't wavered from that since I first looked at this spread a couple of days ago. It's been a couple of weeks since we've seen Herbert play at the level for which you talked about earlier, but he still has that capability, and this Chargers offense has the capability of being explosive. And I think that reemerges this weekend against a so-so Falcons team, and the Chargers are able to pull this one out as home underdogs.
Yeah, to me, this is an overreaction line when it's at live right now. It started when it was open at -1 for the Chargers. It swung all the way to 2.5 for Atlanta. So I'll take the Chargers at 2.5. I think that's good value. For a coach that's desperate to keep his job, who's on the hot seat. I think that factors more than a coach in Atlanta who's desperate to make an impression to get a job. I like the Chargers. Speaking of overreaction lines, we got another overreaction line for me in this next game. Pittsburgh going to Buffalo. Two good teams, two teams who could see each other in the playoffs. The Buffalo Bills at home are favored by 2.5. Now this has swung all the way to when it was open, the Steelers being favored by 2.5. Who do you like? The team's trending certainly in different directions, but who you got in this one?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And I feel like they are trending in different directions, despite being 2 of the 3 or 4 best teams in the AFC right now. The Steelers, especially on offense, are really struggling. They're very one-dimensional. They've kind of been figured out. They can't run the ball and they can't throw deep. And so defenses are playing them that way, and it's not really working out in their favor. Meanwhile, Josh Allen just played what was probably his best game of the year. He played in his September form, to be sure, against San Francisco, where he was dealing the ball and making throws that most guys can't make, maybe outside of Patrick Mahomes. So yeah, they're going in different directions, but I still feel like this is going to be a tight game. I still feel like the Steelers are going to show up on Sunday night and be able to do things on defense that are going to frustrate the Bills. That said, I still like the Bills to cover because this is a relatively small spread, so I'll take the home favorites.
Yeah, I really struggle with this one, and I hadn't really made my mind up, so I was hoping that you would convince me either way. Which you said a lot of things that were really compelling. I'm still torn, and I was actually super excited to pick the Bills at 2.5 because of how well Allen is playing. 3 games this year with 4 TD passes. It's tied for the most ever in franchise history. The Bills wideouts are averaging 236 yards receiving a game. It's the most in the league. In Pittsburgh, you mentioned it, really struggling on defense, and they're last in terms of average of running the ball, 3.7 yards per carry. They have no intermediate to deep pass game. Everything is short. But I'm still feeling like picking the Bills. I know Bills Mafia. I always go against you. You let me know about it. But I feel like the swing of 5-point difference because of 1 week of football is too much. And for that reason, I'll take Pittsburgh through, gritting my teeth. The Bills should win. They played better recently. Pittsburgh's lost smoke and mirrors, but they still have only lost 1 game. And they had to have a team come back to beat them. I'll take Mike Tomlin and Roethlisberger to bounce back in a big way.
Given your checkered history picking the Bills or picking against the Bills, I'm sure Bills Mafia is thrilled you're picking against them because it usually doesn't go your way. So you're kind of doing them a favor here.
It's a good point by you. I'll hear about the disrespect with some mean looking emojis, but I'll see some smile emojis when Bills Mafia fades my pick and makes some money on Sunday.
Exactly.
The last game of the week, Baltimore goes to Cleveland. Remember, the season started with Baltimore waxing the Browns, but they've gone in different directions recently. Maybe Baltimore, as they start to get healthy, start to get some players back, from the COVID-19 lists, can make this a bit more interesting. But despite the fact that these teams are trending in different directions, Baltimore on the road still favored by 1 point. Now, that's improvement from 2.5 where the line started, but yet still 60% of the public likes the Ravens. No respect still for the Browns. Are you going to give them some respect?
This is a really tough one for me because, outside of one weird loss to the Browns last September, Lamar Jackson's Ravens have had their way with Cleveland. But at the same time, I don't really feel like this is vintage Lamar Jackson Ravens right now. The offense doesn't look right. They've got some problems on the offensive line. Obviously, they haven't had the same ability to get the ball downfield, and the defense is just okay. But the Browns are still the Browns. I'm having a really tough time getting to a place where I can confidently pick the Browns every week. That being said, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to go in. I want the Browns to win this game. It's basically a pick 'em. The Browns technically are home underdogs, and what they did last week against the Titans was incredibly impressive. So I'm going to take the Browns despite not fully being there yet.
I mean, it's funny that you want them to win because I feel like Baker Mayfield might be insufferable if they beat the Ravens and have another huge performance. The Browns' second 4-game win streak of the season. They're playing really, really good football, and more importantly, complementary football. Myles Garrett has been a beast defensively, and Stefanski is calling plays to make sure that offense is running the ball first and foremost and staying on schedule with the passing game. The Ravens have really, really struggled, and even against the beleaguered Dallas Cowboys, the best player in that game was the wind, and the fact that the Cowboys missed a lot of chippy field goals. That game should have been much closer. The Ravens didn't look great. Lamar Jackson did look wildly inaccurate at times, but I'm still not a believer in the Browns. Yes, I know the record is good. This is how they got their wins. They're 3-0 versus the NFC East. That don't impress me much. They've beaten the Bengals twice. So has everybody in their division. But their 3 losses to the Raiders, pretty good team. Steelers, very good team. And this Ravens team by a combined 73 points. Yes, they beat the Tennessee Titans badly. Yes, they had a nice, impressive win by the Colts. But ultimately, when they've had to play against playoff-like opponents, they haven't been up to the task. So maybe I need one more price check on the Cleveland Browns before I'm willing to go there. But until then, I'm going to take the real small number in 1. I'm going to take the Ravens to win. But that's just what I think. What do you think? Let us know. If you're going to follow one of us closely, probably should be Gilo, given his recent record and his overall record. But let us know what picks you like, which ones you don't like, who you've got. Hit us up in the comments and make sure to like, favorite, and share, no matter what platform you're consuming this on. Thanks so much for hanging out with us.